Hey, how are you doing? That's so last decade. Next time you want to find out about somebody, walk up and say, hey, would you like to enter initial configuration dialog? By the time we're done here, we will walk through the first question on every new Cisco device. Do you want to enter the initial configuration dialog? It's been around since I first got into Cisco, 1999, 2000-ish, and it's still on routers and switches today. When you first boot a device, if it has no configuration, which means you either just got it out of the box from the factory or you just erased the configuration, which is very easy to do, it's going to come up right after the boot process and it's going to say, would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? The answer to it isn't what you expect. You would think, how nice. Somebody's asking me to initially configure this device. But the answer every single time should be no. I am convinced that there is somebody who works at Cisco that looks like this that probably played a key role in building the Cisco iOS, their operating system, in the initial underpinnings of Cisco's day, because this question should be removed or it should be completely refined, and neither has happened over decades of Cisco's existence. And so many people that are just getting into Cisco is like, oh, well, yeah. And then by like question 30, you're like, what have I done? I don't even know why I'm here. So the answer to the question is no, you don't want to I can't even say it. Enter the initial configuration dialog. You want to configure your router or your switch manually. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's so much more efficient than that initial configuration dialog. I'm going to show you what that looks like here on a live router, but just know, I'm going to plant that seed. When you see that question every single time, just type in no. Now you see right above it, there's another question that pops up on some devices, and that is, would you like to terminate auto install? So this is a really useful feature if, say, you're, I don't know, Papa John's Pizza, right? And you are now moving into a new state or a new region, and you're going to roll out 200 stores all at the same time to saturate the new region with pizza and health. So when you do that, maybe as the network engineer, you end up with stacks of 200 routers that you need to configure. Well, you can actually build the configuration, and it's a lot easier to build the configuration, as little template text files. And as the routers boot, if you set up the environment correctly, they can do something called, you guessed it, auto install, where they'll broadcast saying, hey, I'm a router, I need my config. The server will say, oh, here you go, and router's good to go, box it up, ship it to Papa John's store 53. So you can see this one, the default is yes, and if you just press the enter key, if you get that question, it will terminate the auto install. This one, however, has no default. So I'm jumping over here to my pod of Cisco equipment, and I have my console cable connected still to this Cisco 1921 router, USB to serial converter, USB connection. It is recognized as COM4 in the device manager. I've got my terminal sitting right on the screen. Zooming into that, you can see I just booted this router. I literally walked into my office and turned it on this morning. It still has no configuration, so I'll click on that. And it's asking, would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? Pressing the enter key is of no effect. It will just keep repeating the question. So for the one time and one time only in probably 4 years, because I never answer yes to this unless I'm teaching somebody, here's what it looks like. I'm going to answer yes. And you can see right up front, it says, well, do you want to enter basic management setup? And you would think that would be the commands to get this router basically configured for management remotely. And you would be right. But Mad Max's opinion of what those commands are different than probably you or I. So what is the name of this router? AZ-HQ router. What is your enable secret password? This is actually the password that protects something known as privilege mode. So I'm going to say this will be super secret. What is the enable password? This is something we'll talk about later when we get to the base configuration. This is a clear text password. You actually never want to use it. I'll put Cisco. What is the virtual terminal password? And actually, hang on, momentary pause. You never want to use it. Why is it making me type it in? Because they haven't updated it. Cisco knows nobody uses this. What is your virtual terminal password? This is essentially your telnet password. I'll just type in telnet. Hit enter. Do you want to configure SNMP network management? Yeah, but not right now. Not when I'm initially setting up this device. Not when I'm initially just trying to get it configured to work remotely. SNMP is amazingly useful. It allows me to monitor the router, make sure it's good, but it's part of a bigger setup that we should do at a later time. So why are you asking me? Okay, this is the one thing. if there's only one good thing about this, this is it. It's this output right here, which shows the interfaces on the device. This actually comes from a command. I'm going to show it to you later. Spoiler alert, show IP interface brief, which helps me identify exactly the interface numbering I should be using for each one of them. Now I can see that it got an IP address via DHCP on this gigabit 0/0 interface. That's great. Good job for you. And it's saying, which interface are you going to use as your management network? Which one are you going to telnet in and manage this device remotely? Here, you want to see something funny? Watch it. Okay, moment of truth, pure honesty. I recorded this a moment ago, and I did what I'm about to show you, and now I know why it does it. Let me show it to you. So it says which interface, and I'll say, oh, gigabit 0/0. Just paste that right in there. It's like invalid interface. What? And that's about where I cut, and I was like, maybe I don't know how to work on Cisco devices. No. You know the problem? They don't have error parsing on this thing to where if there's spaces after the interface, it recognizes that's not valid. So if I literally delete the spaces, it's like, oh, I'll take that. Can we stop there? Let's stop there. Let me blaze through a few more of these commands, but that tells you just how useless this utility is. Do you want to configure the IP address? Sure. IP address? Sure. Subnet mask? Sure. Here's the basic configuration. Do you want to save this? Do you want to go back to the iOS without saving this config, or return to the setup without saving this config? So I'm going to go back to the iOS command, and it says you can enter setup. If you ever want to do that again, you can just type in the command setup at the iOS prompt. My screen fills with text, which means the router has now gone through its boot process, and it said you ignored pretty much all your configuration from that wizard. Here's the router. Can I show you? Watch this. Watch this. Uh-huh. 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 There it is. I did everything there manually that little wizard was trying to walk me through. So much faster. I feel so much more confident as a human being than going through that initial configuration dialog. And I would encourage you to do the same. So you saw that, and that, by the way, was just the basic management setup. If we would have chose not to go through the basic management setup, it would have been prompted with all the flurry of questions that are out there. So let us allow Mad Max to go his way in peace and never enter the initial configuration dialog again. We've now walked through the first question on every new Cisco device. Do you want to enter the initial configuration dialog? The answer, no. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.